Let's talk about the cloud ready principles. I think all apps should meet these standards. There's the 12-factor app and beyond the 12-factor app that you can find online. To me, these main 10 are the things that I care about for getting an app ready to be cloud hosted. And I think these days you should probably make every app this way. So start with one code base. I'm surprised at how many times people try to put two apps in one repository, or they need two repositories or more to make one app. Why would you even do that? So, to me, this seems obvious because you want to trigger any of your, downstream continuous integration activities based off of changes in the code base. And you don't want to make it complicated. Just make it one-to-one. The second thing is code, credentials, and configuration are explosive when combined. I like that. Basically, keep them separate. So code is basically anything that you instructions for the computer. Credentials are like passwords, API keys, things like that, things that are secrets. And then configuration is anything that are basic settings that you'll need to configure the application to work in various different environments, whether that be like an IP address, what mode it's operating in, the port. That's a key thing. What port does it respond to? Sometimes I've had experiences where we've had like a prod mode and a dev mode and things like that. So anything like that, that's configuration. Although keep those things separate. Whatever mechanism you want to use, there's various services for keeping credentials, and configuration. A lot of times that is just kept as environment variables. That seems a good place to put that. When designing your app, build the API first. I think that's a good principle. I did this with the Family Santa app as well with these three things, all of them actually. But building the API first, that means that part of your project probably involves some kind of API, whether that's internal to your application or whether that's an external service for other people to use. You want to start there because that's the contract between the various pieces of your application. And you want to get that contract settled fairly early on. You can change it later, but you want to start with that contract so that other people can build from there. Authentication and authorization of endpoints. Think about your security. Don't just build an API and not think about, how do people get access to this. You want to make sure that there's either a user access key or a username, password, or some sort of mechanism by which people can get permission to access your application, as well as with authorization, like which endpoints can they access and what capabilities do they have at each of those endpoints. Number 5, logs should be considered just event streams. I've been in companies where we've exported our logs, we've done our logging into a database. It certainly makes it easy to query to find out what's going on with your systems. But the problem is sometimes you can't access your database. And that's actually one of the reasons why you don't want to keep your logs there. Just output it to standard out and let other systems consume that and log into other logging systems. And also in a similar sense, any kind of telemetry, I like that phrase that's basically thinking about your app as being on the moon. Like you can't go to the computer and look and see what's going on. You need to send any data that you need to know about your system. If it's not in your logs, then you're going to need to send it to some third-party place or whatever for keeping track of what your system is doing. A lot of times the cloud providers will give you your CPU usage, your memory usage, your disk usage, things like that, network usage, various things that you can get from those services. You should build your own or use a third-party app. I like to use New Relic New Relic has a free level that is more than enough from what I'm doing for this project. And I could show you that on another video, but has all the features that I need. Number 6, run admin or schedule processes as a one-off, not part of the main code. The main code should be able to be replicated multiple times, and you don't want to be polluting your main code with things that, you know, you've got to run once per day or something along those lines. You just don't want to have that. It doesn't just fit. It doesn't fit into the main code. It doesn't belong there. Number 7, stateless. Don't keep anything inside of any one of those containers that your app is in. If you have multiple copies of your app running, which is likely, then you don't want to be keeping anything cached that's going to be only in that, you know, one of those instances. It needs to be stored outside of your container, outside of your app, in either a database or you know, Redis or something along those lines, where or even a file system, depending on how often you need to access it, things like that. Number 8, disposability. Start up and shut down fast and clean. So what that's saying is you really should be able to start up your system and have it operational in a few seconds. And as far as shutting down clean, if you started up a database connection or something like that, make sure you close your connections before you exit your process. Be looking for a kill message, and then make sure you clean up after yourself when you leave. Don't just let those database connections stay open. 9, all your resources are external dependencies. So that means no writing to local disk. Everything, if you need some files, you got to grab them from some external place. If you need to get some data, you need to log into a database that's separate. You want to have everything that's a dependency outside of this app. The app should be a read-only resource. You start it up, and then it's running, and that's it. Number 10, ports can be configured from the environment. That's key for a lot of things running on the internet, that they may not be hosting your app on port 80. It may be some other port. So you need to have the flexibility built into your app to look for the port value in your local environment as a setting for your app. Just read it in and then use that, and have a default that's reasonable. 3000, 4000, something like that. It can use for local testing. 8080 sometimes is common. You know, use a port as a default that you can use for local testing, but then have something configurable that the cloud provider can assign. So if you've done steps 7 through 10, you're actually ready for concurrent horizontal scaling, which these cloud providers can do for you. And that's just a nice note that those are the key things that they'll be looking for. Make sure that you can, you know, like for example, this one, disposability, this one, that a lot of times something will happen and they'll kill your app and just start a new one. And you just have to be ready to do that. That should be a reasonable thing, a reasonable expectation. So, all right, that's all I wanted to cover for Cloud Ready Principles. Go and do that.